If you have stood at a pharmacy counter lately and felt like you were arguing with a ghost, you have already seen one of the clearest rituals of modern American healthcare. Dana is 41, insured through work, and trying to pick up a routine inhaler on a Tuesday between a 12:30 team call and a 5:15 pickup she cannot miss. A text lights up on her phone. Your prescription is ready for pickup. It sounds like the end of an errand. It sounds easy. But when she reaches the counter, the technician clicks a mouse, frowns at the screen, and says the phrase that now defines routine care in America. It's showing as pending on our end. You may need to call your insurance. That is the shift hiding inside ordinary healthcare. The friction does not always happen in the ER. It happens here, in a 4-minute exchange, where a routine refill hits an invisible wall. America spends more on healthcare than any other rich country, yet even the ordinary parts of care now feel harder to finish, not easier. At first, it looks like a small inconvenience, a pharmacy delay, a bad handoff, a computer problem. But the first burden is rarely the medicine itself. It is the workflow around the medicine. Dana is not being told no in a clean way. She is being pushed into administrative fog. The prescription may be covered, but the claim is rejected. The drug may be approved, but only after a prior authorization. The doctor may have sent it, but the pharmacy cannot release it. The insurer may cover it, but only under a different rule than the one Dana can see at the counter. Nobody standing in front of her fully owns the next step. The pharmacist cannot override it. The doctor often does not know it is happening until Dana calls. The insurance company exists mostly as a phone tree. So what looks like one failed errand breaks into smaller errands before it becomes care. This is why the pharmacy counter feels so much bigger than the counter itself. The bottle is right there. The barcode exists. The system has already sent the text. But the actual work of turning that into medicine in hand keeps getting pushed back onto the person standing in line. She is left standing between the greeting cards and the cough drops, waiting for a system she cannot see to decide whether ready was ever true. That is what routine healthcare feels like now for a lot of Americans. Not one clear refusal, but a string of partial completions. Cost is the obvious answer. It is not the full answer. What changed is the shape of the experience. A prescription is supposed to move in a straight line. Doctor, pharmacy, pickup, home. Now it often moves like a relay. The doctor writes it. The insurer reviews it. The PBM applies a formulary rule. The pharmacy sees one version of the claim. Dana sees another. Billing may return later as its own separate event. And for a lot of Americans, the most disorienting part is not just that care is expensive, it is how arbitrary the price can feel. One widely shared example described a CT scan priced at $1,500 in a hospital and $110 through an outside imaging provider. The same test, a radically different number. That kind of gap stops feeling like pricing and starts feeling like architecture. The same thing happens at the counter. Dana's copay can be higher through her own coverage than through a discount app she found in 30 seconds on her phone. At that point, having coverage stops feeling like clarity. It starts feeling like another layer she has to work around. And once that happens, a harder thought starts to creep in. If the covered route is not the cleanest route, what exactly is the card in her wallet simplifying? That is where the hidden structure comes into view. A lot of Americans still think they are dealing with one insurance company and one pharmacy. In reality, routine prescriptions now move through a stack of entities: the insurer, the PBM, the pharmacy chain, the prescriber, the formulary, the prior auth system, the claims system. The care still reaches the patient through institutions, but more and more of the coordination reaches the patient as labor. This is why the pharmacy counter feels so strange. The medicine is close enough to touch. The bag may already be stapled. The text may already say ready. And yet Dana is the one expected to connect the loose ends, repeat the story, call the plan, wait on hold, message the doctor, and come back later. A lot of the cost now lives in the layers around care: verification, coding, formularies, portals, authorizations, handoffs. People are often paying more for every cog of the same system while still feeling less carried by it. And that burden does not land first as drama. It lands as pressure on the ordinary slack a household used to have. It lands in the lunch break that disappears, the commute home that gets extended, the extra trip after dinner, the low-grade exhaustion of knowing one routine refill can still open a clerical fight. That is where routine healthcare stops feeling like an inconvenience and starts acting like pressure on the household itself. A lot of people are still getting their medications. They are still making appointments, answering portal messages, checking claims, and driving back to the pharmacy after work. That is exactly why the pressure hides so well. The job is still there. The insurance card is still in the wallet. The prescription eventually gets filled. From the outside, it all still passes as normal. Inside the week, it feels different. Routine healthcare now asks for slack many people no longer have: a spare lunch break, a flexible boss, a second car, enough money in checking that one surprise copay or one premium jump does not throw off the month. For some households, the premium itself now feels like a smaller mortgage. The insurance card still works as proof of enrollment. It no longer reliably feels like proof of simplicity. At some point, people stop asking whether they have insurance and start asking a harder question. Why does having insurance still feel so much like being on their own? That is the real loss, not access in the abstract, but usability in real life. For many households, the plan they keep is not the good plan. It is just the least destructive one. Sometimes that means the least bad network. Sometimes the least chaotic billing. Sometimes the fewest chances to start over with new rules and new doctors. You can see the system most clearly in the way people now organize their week around avoiding its friction. They batch issues into one visit. They protect one pharmacy for continuity. They compare the insurance price with the cash price. They learn when telehealth helps and when it only creates another handoff. They stop choosing the ideal option and start choosing the one least likely to explode into 3 more errands. A lot of families now sort routine care with a practical framework, even if they never say it out loud. Time burden, not just the pickup, but the total footprint of waiting, calling, driving, and following up. Continuity, whether the place actually knows the history and owns what happens next. Price clarity, not just what today costs, but whether this option creates more billing layers later. Flexibility, whether it fits work, school pickup, weekends, and everyday geography. Follow-up risk, whether this solves the problem in one pass or turns into another chain of tasks. This is why some people stay with a pharmacy they do not love, keep a plan they complain about, or pay cash for one refill while using coverage for another. They are not acting irrationally. They are trying to reduce friction in the place where friction now matters most: the ordinary week. That is the real pivot. People stop choosing care the idealized way. They choose the option least likely to blow up the rest of the week. The most revealing part of routine healthcare may be how harmless it still looks at the beginning. Your prescription is ready for pickup. The message still speaks in the language of convenience. Quick, digital, handled. It sounds like a routine adult task in a country that promises modern medical efficiency. But for a lot of Americans, that message now carries a second meaning. Not just medicine is due. Work is due. Time to coordinate. Time to verify. Time to fit one more system into a week that already has no empty space left. Dana will probably get the inhaler. Most people eventually do. That is why this pressure can pass as ordinary. What changed is the amount of invisible effort required to make the system produce something that was already supposed to be routine. The refill still arrives only after negotiation, patience, and the unpaid labor of staying on top of a system that keeps insisting it is modern. The bottle still says refill. The experience says administration.